With Father's Day almost here, we remember the love that Tim had for his own father, the man he wrote about in his best-selling book, Big Russ and Me. Big Russ raised his son with values such as humility and hard work, and Tim brought all of that to his career as a journalist. As our old colleague Stone Phillips learned, it was a career his dad, indeed his entire childhood, had prepared him for.
I thought I would grow up in Buffalo, and if I got real lucky, I'd have a chance to go to college, maybe even law school, and then be a good lawyer here or a good teacher here. And that would be the extent of fulfilling my dream.
From NBC News in Washington, this is Meet the Press with Tim Russert.
Tim Russert's childhood dreams never included power brokers, policymakers, and presidents. His start in the news business was a lot more humble.
You are responsible for his start in journalism.
Well, that's what he tells me, and I'd like to think that too. Yep.
Sister Mary Lucille Saccarelli was Tim's teacher in 7th grade when she named him editor of the school newspaper. It was a carefully planned appointment with ulterior motives.
I was in the back of the class at St. Bonaventure School, flicking rubber bands with paper clips, the whole shot. Spitballs, the best. And she had enough of it.
He says this was your way of channeling his excessive energy.
Yes, don't misunderstand me. He was not sneaky. Not sneaky. He was clever.
It was the greatest thing that ever happened to me. And it gave me such a sense of respect and self-worth.
Class of 64. All right. There's your favorite student.
Right there.
Sister Lucille's enthusiasm was infectious, whether it was about Tim's newspaper or the country's new president. Her love of the Kennedy clan earned her the nickname Sister Kennedy, and it rubbed off on young Tim. John F. Kennedy was a Catholic, an Irish-American, and a World War II veteran like Tim's father. And Tim says that made him seem like one of the family.
We thought Kennedy was just like us, Irish Catholic. We didn't know he was rich.
Your freedom and theirs. He was wonderful, inspirational, and had that ability to lead people and to convince them that they could do anything. You know, and I think that Tim caught that.
Tim was 12 in 1962 when President Kennedy visited Buffalo. It's unthinkable today, but his motorcade route and timetable were printed in the local paper. As a sanitation worker and truck driver, Tim's father knew the city streets like the back of his hand, and where the family would have the best chance to see its hero.
We had a perfect sight. You know, we thought we wouldn't see him, but I told him the route they went.
So he said, oh, we're all going to go see the president. Parks the car. We walk over, and we're standing there. There weren't many people. He said, he should be here in about 5 minutes. He put me on top of a mailbox. And I'm sitting there looking, and all of a sudden, coming down, here's the limousines, motorcycle escort, flag, American flags, bubble top is off. And they're seated on the back. Red hair, that's why I remembered, auburn. And he's waving like this. And my dad pushes me off the mailbox. And I stumble out in the street, and President Kennedy reaches out. And I reached out, smiled at me. I can still, it just...
And you shook hands.
And my sisters are clapping, and my mother's hugging my dad. Do you believe this? Dad took out a White Owl cigar, right? A big White Owl. Smoking, goes, can you believe this? A Russert has met a president of the United States.
That's where the announcement came over. Your attention, please. Your attention, please.
Just a year later, the Russerts were mourning John Kennedy's death, as if it had all been too good to be true, Tim says. He put out a special edition of the school paper and wrote about the president who had smiled at him and grasped his hand.
President Kennedy was that rare and perfect combination of Christian, father, statesman, peacemaker, author, politician, and last but not least, a friend of the common man. That's very idealistic, but when I wrote that, I meant every word of it.
The school sent a copy of Tim's editorial to the president's brother, Attorney General Robert Kennedy. To Tim's surprise, he got a reply.
It was such an important lesson to me and to all of us. You know, you can be heard. You can reach out beyond the boundaries of South Buffalo.
At American Legion Post 721, Big Russ may be better known than his famous son. He was a parachute rigger during World War II. It wasn't glamorous work, but lives depended on him doing his job right, time and time again. After the war, Big Russ came home to South Buffalo, married, and raised 4 children, Tim and 3 daughters. To support his family, he took 2 full-time jobs. He drove a newspaper delivery truck, but his main job was with the sanitation department, where he rose through the ranks from lifter to driver and eventually to foreman.
He'd work all day, come home and eat supper, stretch out on the couch, grab a cat nap, and go back to work again. I now realize it was the quiet eloquence of his example that influenced me more than anything else. His glass is 2/3 full. The most optimistic man I've ever met in my life. Yeah, my dad's favorite expression, and I to this day, when he says it, I swear I can see his heart pounding. What a country.
The senior Russert is a man of few words, less so his son, who's written a book called Big Russ and Me, to honor the father whose life, he says, has served as a template for his own.
Keep working. Never look back. Always show up. Always do your job. Always be prepared.
Big Russ made sure he could provide, giving his 4 children pretty much everything they needed, just not all the things they wanted. In Tim's case, he writes, that included a brand-name baseball glove.
I really wanted my own new baseball glove. I finally got it. It came in a plastic bag, and I opened it up, and it wasn't a Rawlings or a Spalding. It was some other model. I was, oh man, what is this? And then I realized, what a dope I was. Here I was, my dad working 2 jobs full-time, gives me a brand new glove, the best he could possibly buy or afford, and I'm turning my nose up at it. I felt awful. I had violated every lesson that he had taught me.
Did the 2 of you talk about it?
I didn't have to, because when I acted the way I did, he just put his head down and walked away. And that's the worst punishment that you could ever have. So I'm sorry.
Profound.
Never too late to say
No,
that.
that's right.
Tim says his appreciation for his father's work ethic has grown through the years. But as a teenager, he got a taste of how hard Big Russ worked when he took a job on a garbage truck to earn money for college.
It is grueling work. I was exhausted. The last day I did it, after 4 summers, I took off my headband, I took off my glove, took off my garbage boot, threw it in the back of the truck and pushed the lever. And I said, I'm out of here. I'm never coming back. And if there's ever a moment in college or in law school where I thought about bagging it, it was, oh no. You want to go back to those trucks? What would Big Russ think? You couldn't get up to take an exam?
Tim passed his exams, graduated from college, then law school, and went on to work in New York Democratic Party politics. In 1984, he joined NBC News, and 7 years later became moderator of Meet the Press.
What do you think of the job he does on Meet the Press?
We're going to keep him in office as long as we can.
When I interviewed first President Clinton a few years ago and then President Bush in the Oval Office, both times he called me on Monday morning. What a country. Because I can't imagine the thought of my kid sitting there toe-to-toe with the President of the United States. Then he says, by the way, why didn't you ask him about my Social Security?
You have called the guy sitting next to you the cheapest and most accurate focus group around.
It's amazing. Stone, he has one word that is devastating for a politician. The guy is a phony. If Big Russ calls you a phony, you are finished. You'll never make it. And he's never been wrong.
Russert says his approach to interviewing is simple. Learn as much as you can about your guest, then take the other side.
How do you respond to critics who say that you brought the nation to war under false pretenses?
Yes. First of all, I expected to find the weapons.
He told an audience at the University of Buffalo that the stakes have never been higher.
A very big election about very big differences on very big issues.
His whole family was there for the speech. Tim's 3 sisters, his mother, and Big Russ. On this night, the Russerts of South Buffalo were royalty. Blessed but not entitled, as Big Russ told his son countless times growing up.
I feel like I'm very honored to have him as a son. Nothing I wouldn't do for him. He knows that. And I don't think that there's anything he wouldn't do for me,
40 years ago, you were chasing down JFK's limo for a handshake. Today, presidents come to talk to you. I mean, it's hard not to be struck by how far the Russerts have come in one generation.
And yet, how much we are still so much the same. And I think the best word is grounded. We know who we are. We know where we came from.
The epilogue to Russert's book is a letter to his college-bound son. Tim reminds Luke of the values his grandfather stands for to this day, the optimism and idealism that carried Big Russ through his 80 years and that he instilled in his own son so many years ago.
You know, I interview politicians for a living, and people can get jaded and cynical about the political process, and I must admit I have my moments. But all that is trumped by what a country. And I hope that idealism never leaves me, and I hope my son adopts it as well.
So hard to believe. Back in a moment, remembering Tim Russert.